Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, known as SNAP, could see its federal funding dry up this weekend as a casualty of the ongoing government shutdown. Now, losing the food assistance program would hit Arizona hard, which in turn will likely put significant added pressure on state and local food banks. And joining us now is Ashley St. Thomas. She's Director of Public Policy at the Arizona Food Bank Network. And Ashley, I'm really glad you're our first guest because moments before we started taping tonight's show, the governor's office announced that $1.8 million in unspent COVID relief funds, COVID-19 relief funds, are going to provide emergency food assistance, including $1.5 million to food banks. Talk to us about this.
Well, it is good news, and thank you, Ted, for having me here to speak about it. That $1.5 million investment just announced. We're incredibly grateful to hear about that, and it's going to go directly to the regional food banks in the state. So that's St. Mary's and United in Maricopa County, Yuma Community out in Yuma, and Community Food Bank of Southern Arizona down in Tucson to help them provide assistance during this crisis.
And the Food Bank Network, you guys are pretty much partnering with the governor's office with this?
Yes, we are really grateful to be able to help and provide support to food banks as they need it.
And there's an emergency program as well announced by the governor's office, again, just moments ago, $30 to SNAP households. $30 means a lot to a SNAP household.
Yeah, it absolutely does, especially right now, to your point, when funds are not going to be issued in the beginning of November, starting on Saturday, to households across the state. So we know that about 850,000 people in Arizona participate in SNAP. 70% of them are kids, older adults, or people living with disabilities. And that funding, as a result of the federal government shutdown, is not going to be released.
Let's talk about, I mean, there's some people right now probably still not sure what SNAP is. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It was formerly called Food Stamps, and it's a grocery purchasing program for low-income Americans. And it's the country's largest and most effective anti-hunger program. It's for low-income households that earn roughly $40,000 a year for a family of four. And so it helps them stretch their budgets to be able to purchase groceries.
And what, like about 900,000 Arizonans affected here?
Yeah, 850,000 last month. We got that data recently, and that's about 430,000 households. And so these are folks who, if they're not kids, older adults, or people living with disability, they're working adults, right? Working one or two jobs, and SNAP helps them stretch their budget.
How many kids are affected? Do you know?
It's about 400,000, I think.
Yeah.
So this assistance from the governor is going to go a long way.
Okay, so, and again, this is all because of the government shutdown here. And I think some contingency funds had been used, but they're stopping on November 1st. And there's some call for the United States government to be using more contingency funds here. Have you heard more about that?
No.
Yeah.
Short answer, no. But what I will say is that we would urge both Congress and the administration to use any resource available to them to ensure that not only Arizonans but people across the country are held harmless in this negotiation and are able to put food on the table.
The governor said she was counting on nonprofits to step up and be partners with this. It's a different dynamic with this additional funding, but it's still not, I mean, it's still not that federal funding. Can food banks, let's stick with food banks here, can you fill in the gaps?
Well, food banks are doing what they do best, which is more with less, but we know that in a month, about $155 million in SNAP benefits come through Arizona. So that's a typical month. So $1.5 million to assist food banks is wonderful, and we're incredibly grateful, but it's not going to fill that gap, obviously. So food banks are resourceful. They know what their communities need. But right now, what we're trying to do is make sure that, they have enough to provide.
And as far as the food banks are concerned, what do they expect? How are they expecting? How are they gearing up for that?
Well, it's an emergency food system, so they have the infrastructure and the experience to scale and to scale quickly. So that's what they're doing right now. As of the information coming out from the state agency last week that that families would not be receiving these benefits, we've already seen a significant spike in demand. And so it's also important to keep in mind that demand was already high. So our food banks across the state were serving 770,000 people per month. And just for reference, that's about 60% higher than before the pandemic and 30% higher than in peak pandemic months. So the cost of food is high. People are already struggling. Food banks are doing the best that they can to meet demand.
To meet those demands, will fewer people be served? Will hopefully the same number of people be served, but perhaps not as much food? How do you work that equation?
I know that food banks are preparing as best that they can, and they're working together to see if they can do some collective purchasing. They're trying to set up mobile distributions in parts of the state where SNAP participation is high. Will people get less? I can't say necessarily. We're going to do everything that we can to make sure that doesn't happen.
You referred to something here that I was going to ask about. Are food banks working together on, is this all hands on deck? No silos, everyone's working together?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that our website, azfoodbanks.org, people can go there and find food if they need it, find what's open near them. And our phone has been ringing quite a lot, and we're just trying to provide answers to people.
And you got Thanksgiving coming up. That's usually a crush, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I know that our food banks were already preparing for that, and we'll continue to do those holiday distributions that people have come to rely on. But in the meantime, we're going to do what we can to help them scale up.
And in the meantime, this 1.8 and 1.5 for food banks in particular, that has to help. That must have been a great feeling to hear that.
Yeah, it was absolutely much needed, and I think we're going to continue to rely on public support and private citizens. People really do want to help in times of crisis, and that's what we're in right now.
Do you need more from the state? Do you need the rainy day fund to be tapped in? I mean, it seems like it's kind of raining out there as far as folks who are on SNAP. But rainy day fund, you got some states are calling in the National Guard to help food banks distribute and all that. Is that kind of stuff down the road here? Would you like to see those kinds of things?
Well, I can't speculate on what the governor or the state are planning to do, but I can say that certainly any resources is welcome. I know that a lot of people have reached out to me and asked where they could donate either financial donations, food donations, or their time. And there's ways to find all of that on our website.
And again, the website is?
azfoodbanks.org.
All right, azfoodbanks.org. And Ashley St. Thomas, well, we're really glad you were here today because, I mean, goodness gracious, minutes before the show started, this information came down and it was good information, and we're glad we had you here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.